said our DNA belongs to the cosmos. It doesn't belong to the individual who had it while they were alive. So DNA belongs to everybody. It's just the genetic material that's like the colors that are put on the canvas. It belongs to all of creation.
Okay, so I have to ask that question in the spirit of the holidays. Dr. Lessin, what is the connection of the Christian church to the Anunnaki, if any? When I say Christian,
Jesus.
I mean
Okay. Understand that the teachings of Jesus is different than Christianity.
Yes.
Jesus challenged all authoritarian and rip-off monetary systems, and basically was saying, hey, you can feel your spirituality within. The same thing that Buddha said. It's here, it's imminent, and so that is very, very different than a hierarchy which gets all the bucks and controls everybody and diddles little boys in the choir. This is absolutely not. So that the teachings of Jesus are just beautiful truth, and Christianity, organized Christianity, tends to be another ripoff system. But in every single system, there are some people that reach enlightenment. Even the Islamists have Sufis. Every people that reflect, people that just do ibogaine in the forests of West Africa. Doesn't matter. People can directly access spirituality. That's the teaching of all the masters from all the different societies, and not some organized church that takes money from people.
Yeah, we have like 4 minutes before the break, or 3 minutes, right? We have different spiritual consciousness and belief systems where you can directly access source and you communicate with the divine and the totality of existence and consciousness. But the religions that were created by the Anunnaki require you to have an intermediary. You're not good enough to talk to God. You have to talk to a priest. You have to talk to, an Iman. You have to have. You're not possibly good enough to understand all this without somebody interpreting it. That is one of the litmus tests. Is this a
authoritarian religion or not?
Is it authoritarian?
And just is a God punitive and hurt people? Because that is absolutely not what the teachings of enlightened people are.
But you can still become enlightened even though you might be part of an organized religion. But the whole purpose of an organized religion is to be dogma and keep you mind controlled and from reaching higher consciousness and becoming enlightened. So that's kind of summarized in the 2 minutes that we have before the break.
Yeah, I was going to start doing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, Paramahansa Yogananda. I was going to start doing his meditation.
Are you going to speak up a little bit? We can't hear you. Go say that again.
Yeah, we dig Yogananda for sure.
Yeah, Paramahansa Yogananda. I'm actually going to sign up and start doing some of his meditations, but I guess you have to go through the course to do it. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing, or I mean, is that, or can you do that on your own?
They're wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
They're really good. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'm doing that for sure. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 2 minutes left. So during the break, let's figure out each of you individually what you might want to cover. As you can see, we're on the third of the 4 hours, and it goes fast. So
yeah, we want to interview you instead of us just rapping.
I know we know about ourselves. We get bored with ourselves, but it's okay. But I think everybody has something to contribute on this show, and I really encourage everybody to share your experiences, because by connecting the dots and putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, we get the bigger picture.
And I want to know why Tallahassee's carrying that guy.
Yeah, we still didn't get that answer. Why is Tallahassee carrying some guy? What do you look like?
It's an image.
Your face. What's that?
It's an image from a show. That's where I got the name. It's where I got the name from for the show, and that is actually that's a picture of Woody Harrelson from a movie, Zombieland.
Oh, it's Woody Harrelson.
Yes, we share a kinship and our love of zombies.
That's great. I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. It was anyway, I think we're at the break. Are we at the break? Yes, breaking for right now. We'll be back in 5. See you in 5. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix. And I'm your host, Jen Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. And we are on Revolution Radio Studio B. And we have with us members of the Stitchwitch panel. We have Tallahassee and Enchanted Soul and Stitchwitch. And we have been talking about everything under the sun and out to the cosmos and back. Before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to our donation button on freedomslips.com. And no, it's not a donation button. Let me see. You go down, you scroll down, go to freedomslips.com, you scroll all the way to the bottom. There we go. And you're going to send your donations to Terry Ackerman at 1793 North Edon, E-D-O-N Road, Allen, A-L-L-E-N, Missouri, 49227. And you can become a Patreon. You can send checks, and we do need your donations because they keep us alive and well, and the lights on, and they help us pay for all the cost of bringing these shows to you. So thank you very much for your donation. Okay. When we were on the break, we were talking about, so welcome back, everybody. We were talking about implants, and Tallahassee was telling us about his implant and how he got an MRI. Anyway, would you like to share your implant MRI story, where it is? And then who was Pamala, I think, had the other implant. Go ahead, Tallahassee, you first. What happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, I went in for a surgery on my right elbow, and it was part of a submuscular transposition that was part of a carpal tunnel surgery in my wrist. Don't ask me why they were connected, but they did the X-ray over at the VA hospital where I was at, and the tech actually came in and got me and brought me into the room where the monitors were, and asked me, he pointed to this, there was this about 7 millimeters, and it was a small metal object, solid, right up against my right humerus, and it's right up against the bone underneath the muscle tissue. And he asked me if I knew what it was, and I said I had no idea where it came from, and he said, well, that's kind of odd that there's no marks on your arm to indicate that it's a wound of any kind, and the fact that it's completely round, it's spherical in nature. And the interesting part about it is I really didn't think too much of it, other than I thought it was kind of odd, and I kind of equated it to, well, maybe it kind of brought back the whole abduction story, or me being gone when I was younger, and I thought, does that have anything to do with it? Because it came up in conversation. And it's been kind of, well, I asked them if they could remove it, and they said they would damage too much muscle getting to it, and they don't know how the muscle didn't get damaged getting put there. So that was one of the reasons why they left it, and it's still there. What I noticed, though, during an MRI was that when I was in the MRI, I started to get really warm and uncomfortable. I started to feel something in my eyes as well, and I could see, even with my eyes closed, I could see a really bright band that kept circling around, going from right to left, like I was seeing a magnetic resonance through my eyelids somehow. But it started making me really hot, really uncomfortable. She came over the microphone and asked me if I was okay. I said, I'm getting kind of warm, and I was feeling tingling all over, really, really intense. And it shut down the machine the first time. She comes up over the microphone and asks me if I need a break. And I said, well, I'm okay. Let's keep going. Let's just get it done. And she ran the machine again. It shut the machine down again. Finally, they had to call a tech in and say, well, we're not going to get a clear image. So they shut down the machine. And she told me, she goes, I really apologize for this. She goes, this has never happened before. She goes, we've had issues with the machine, either not starting up or not imaging during its cycle or some other aspect. But she goes, I've never seen the scan start and stop at the same exact point every time, which happened to be along the line of where my arm was, where the metal was, and or the implant. I don't know if it was metal or not, but it shut the machine down both times. So finally, they just went with what they had on the X-ray, and then did what they had to do during my surgeries and things like that. But it's the feeling I got inside there wasn't claustrophobic or anything, because I'm not claustrophobic. It wasn't uncomfortable. I fully expected the MRI to be, for me, comfortable, because I don't mind the noise. Being from the military and having to sleep during explosions and mortar attacks and whatnot off in the distance, the clicking really didn't bother me. So I just kind of tried to relax. It was the tingling, and it was the heat that felt like it was kind of radiating from my back all the way forward, and then my eyes watering because of what I was feeling and seeing in my eyes. It was just so bright, even with my eyes closed. It was making them water. So they kept checking on me for that. And they're, "Are you okay?" And, "Yeah, I'm totally fine. Just get it over with." And then eventually, of course, they had to scrap the whole thing. But it was very interesting. And as much as I want to see whatever this is close up in my arm, I don't know how to do it, because nobody will take it out. I've tried so many times, and they're like, "We're going to do too much damage. Calcification's already happening around it from your bone. It's literally growing into my bone. It's getting grown over by my bone tissue." And it's just, to them, it was like, how did it get there? Because there's no scar tissue in the muscle. There was no scar tissue in the skin. That's why the X-ray tech pulled me. He goes, "What is that?" He goes, he was like looking at my arm, because I had a piece of metal stuck to me.
Listen, you heard the what I just took your colleague through, and so what you can do, the more Simon has shown, the more anatomically correct you are in your visualization. That's what you're doing, the more you can affect things. And so giving yourself plenty of time, not just over the radio now, see if you can go inside and directly perceive and have a conversation like the one I just facilitated, because there's information there. Remember, if you can get pictures of where it is in your arm and know exactly where it is, you're going to do an even better job.
And you can also invite them to give you more information. Yeah. So before you go to sleep, like say I'm only inviting, forces of light and higher consciousness, but I really want to know what's going on, and I invited you to contact me, and I'm preparing myself for conscious contact. So just begin working with my, higher self, and I will gradually get used to it. Have paper and pen, notebook beside your bed. When you wake up in the morning, write down your impressions, any thoughts that come to you that may not make sense. Just write down keywords. If you wake up, sometimes you might have a message, like you have to go to the bathroom, just write down keywords and then revisit that in the morning. And what happens is, Whitley Strieber talked about it in Union and in some of his subsequent books, that he had to train himself for contact. He was aware it was going on, but he couldn't face it. So he realized this is in his cabin upstate New York, he realized there was a creature, a being, something in his living room downstairs. And so he was up in the loft, and he would get to the top of the stairs, and he'd start to go down, and he'd get freaked out, and he'd come back to bed. But over time, he kept going further and further. And eventually he was able to get all the way down. He saw the being. It was in lotus. It was meditating. And he managed to eventually get sitting in lotus in right across from him. And they started to meditate together and commune with one another. So somehow I read that book years ago, and then I started adjusting. So sometimes they just show up in my living room here, my bedroom, wherever, and they're 3D, they're fully conscious, and I'm not freaked out. I used to be freaked out as a kid, because we're conditioned that can't be real. That's a boogeyman. That's something you need to be afraid of. But you can invite contact, all of you, everybody listening. But do put a protection. Say, I forbid any beings of dark that have ill intention towards me or my family. I forbid you to contact me. But beings of light and love and higher consciousness, you're welcome to contact me. I'm ready to grow, evolve, and become conscious and enlightened. Okay. Anybody have any feedback for Tallahassee or additional questions?
Yeah, you
before
guys
we go
know
over-
Tallahassee better than we do.
Yeah, before we go over to Pamela or the next person.
So, Dr. Lessin,
Hello, Anita. Go ahead.
ask Tallahassee what his other online name is.
What?
Say that again.
I
Ask
said,
what?
ask Tallahassee what his other online name is.
What's your other online name?
You're gonna make me say it. War Machine. Is that what you wanted to hear? Stitch? You wanted to hear me say it? Why? I'm curious.
Yes. So you mentioned, Janet, something called a warrior soldier.
Yeah, the super soldiers, the secret space program. Yes.
Okay,
If you're a
so-
soldier, that's why they're abducting you.
Okay, so talk about that, because yeah, we kind of feel that way about Tallahassee, but we know so little about this that we're not the ones to ask.
Okay, so Tallahassee, do you have any kind of thought or awareness that you were in a secret program? You were in the conscious military, but sometimes they have the public program and then they have what you're doing behind the scenes. So I was on Johnson 8 and I was civilian working for the military. And I thought I was a secretary and a librarian. But then I found out the real story. And often they repress the memories to protect you, but there's always bleed through. And so are you getting any bleed through of any awareness of your other role, and that's why you called yourself that online name?
Well, there was a program during the time I was in the military that I was a part of. It was kind of it was geared towards making sure that not only could we track soldiers individually on the battlefield, but also to communicate and get vital information real time. And I was a part of that. There was some work done. There was something that's put under my scalp, and it's supposed to be biodegradable to the point where it would be gone after so many years. But it was, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I was kind of, leery at the time, but when you're a soldier, you don't ask questions. You didn't sign up to make your own choices. You signed up so the government could make your choices for you. And that's what it's about. So it was definitely something new. I don't want to go into the specifics of it because, to be honest, I had a security clearance while I was there, so I don't know how much of it I can talk about, other than the fact that it was for tracking soldiers on the field, so the LRMs wouldn't, the long-range missile launchers.
Well, you make sense. You make sense. Yeah. And Janet, do you have something to add?
We're just reminiscing.
Sorry, I just
we
lost
haven't
my
heard this story before.
Stand by.
We've heard these stories, but we're hearing details we've never heard before. So we're kind of sitting here with our jaw on the ground.
And who is Mitchell?
He's working the studio right now.
Oh, hi, Mitchell. Okay. Any other questions or feedback on this topic before we go to somebody else?
I just want to say, that the military is protecting us, and that's their first concern. Right. And they're underneath all everything. These people want us to not get bombed and killed, and there is a really positive motive in the military.
Yeah, but we don't want you to get in trouble and start getting visits by the MIBs, the Men in Black. So we're willing to go on to another subject or another person, and unless there's something else you want to say, Tallahassee, before we move on. Excuse me. Anything
Tallahassee?
you want to add to that, Tallahassee?
He may not be on. We may have lost him for a minute.
Okay. So
I-
who else had the implant? Where were they, and what was their function for
It was just Enchanted Soul, and it was
I'm
Tallahassee.
back. I'm back. I'd lost my connection, so I apologize. Can y'all hear me okay?
We just wanted to know
10-4.
if there was anything else you wanted to add before we move on to somebody else or another subject altogether. So, are you complete, Tallahassee?
Yeah, I was pretty much. Where did I stop? Totally lost train of thought after I lost connection. Oh no,
Well,
I was talking about the army implant. That's right.
Yes,
Um,
army implants.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting thing for me to go through. It was odd because there wasn't any direct communication from the individual through the implant. It was more of a vitals and tracking system kind of thing, more locations on the field, so soldiers didn't get hurt by any long-range missiles from our LRMs. But the idea was to have a real-world map of the area in question and know where all the units were, not just because of orders and placement where they should be at a specific time, but real-time data. So it was easier to do it that way, and that's what we were all a part of. And
You go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say
So
they never really
they
said.
cared about you and they wanted to be able to rescue you if they had to, or at worst case scenario, know where the corpse is.
Right,
We're saving
exactly.
lives with it, honey.
Right.
Yeah, the idea was
I
to
wanted to
know
add
where
to that.
everybody was.
Where
And that
you
was
were
the
at time.
biggest
Real
thing
time.
about. Yeah, that was the biggest thing about knowing the vitals real time was you could always know the location of a soldier, but if you didn't have contact and you didn't know they were wounded, unless you had vitals, you couldn't really tell. So the idea was to get real time vitals, because then you could pretty much tell for almost 100%
So
certain
they
what was
get
going on with that soldier.
your pulse, your temperature. What kind
Or
of
the
vitals
lack
could
of it.
they collect?
Or if he's
Yeah, or
dead.
lack of. What kind of information
Well,
were they able to collect with that?
Well, body weight, temperature, heart rate, and usually blood pressure. I'm not sure how they did blood pressure. I think it was sensing not the vessel expansion under the scalp. So I think it was about that. It would basically be a pre-programmed baseline when you first installed it. So they would take your blood pressure and then they would measure the fluxation in the blood vessel optically. And then what would happen is if that ever went lower or higher, they would tell by the fluxation in the vessel rather than trying to cuff an arm while you're out in the field. So the blood pressure could go up or down, the heart rate they could monitor all through watching one blood vessel.
Wow.
So it was quite interesting.
Back in the late 90s, I talked to a super soldier, and he said that they had technology. Whenever you got a shot, your skin was pierced, they could put in the implant, especially going into your bloodstream, which could do all those things. So that's, you're dealing with a technology which is making more public. But, everybody's worried about, the biblical mark of the beast. Apparently, all of us are marked. We all have implants. And anybody still alive now probably has them because we all have had shots.
The smallpox thing that they put on your arm,
that's part of what they did with the vaccines. It's all different now, but when we were kids, we all got the vaccine. Apparently, that was an identifier of your many factors like your race, and then they started to put the chemtrails out. And so if they wanted to target a certain part of the population, the brown people, the black people, the whatever people, they could activate it through the chemtrails. That was what we were told by our early whistleblowers back around the year 2000 or something. So we have that's interesting what you're saying. So that's vital information. So that's what they're doing. So all these soldiers know they're not. It's not a secret. They know what's happening. They sign a release and they get this in. scalp implant. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Keep in mind, this was 20 years ago, too. Probably
Your
progressed.
soul belongs to God, but your body belongs to the U.S. Army.
Yeah, your property, U.S. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a GI issue, a government issue.
Your government issued. Oh my God. Okay. We have about a half an hour. Anybody have any burning shares or questions
I have a
for
question.
the group here? Go
I
ahead.
have a question for you, for you, Janet. Sorry. I know that you guys are supposed to be interviewing us, but you guys have such great material. We could sit here all night. So I have a question. You mentioned the veil of forgetfulness. So what is the reason for it, and what is the reason for it then?
What is the reason for it, and what was the second part?
What is the reason for it thinning now?
Mhm.
The reason is so when you come into the movie, you're not entering knowing the end of the story. Otherwise, you can't enjoy the experience. So you come in to the journey. Part of you, like your highest self, is aware of everything when you enter, when you exit, and there's some possibilities for how you exit. It's not set in stone. It's a direction. You can go down various timelines and have these experiences. So yeah, you're in here and you're able to enjoy it or have the full emotion of expression of what you encounter, the grief, the joy, the fear, the love. Now, what was the second part? And why? I couldn't quite hear.
Why does it seem to be thinning?
It seems to be spinning.
No,
You're saying
thinning,
spinning?
like getting thinner, it's
The
not.
veil is getting thinner,
Oh,
Janet.
it's spinning. Because we're at the end of the experiment, the grand experiment, we all co-created this experiment together to maximize the acceleration of consciousness. And so in order to become conscious, we had to go unconscious so we could diversify creation to our expression and the lessons we learned and the things that we did and the love we shared and even the hate that we shared and how we express it, because we're engaged with each other. It was important. It was important to for us to grow and expand. So now we're at the end of the grand experience because we're lined up with the galactic core, which is the end of the cycle within the cycle within the cycle. So they symbol it like the yugas and the Kali yugas, but we actually are on Earth spinning around the solar system, spinning around the galaxy, and the galaxies are spinning around the galactic core. And when we align with the galactic core on 12/12, a beam came out, which is the DMT activation for all creation. And apparently it took 7 years to get to us. So this 12/21/19, we are now receiving the DMT activation. So this week, I woke up at like 4 o'clock. I go, honey, I'm stoned. What's going on? I go, it's like I took a hit of acid. There's a DMT activation. So we were downloading what was going on. And then a friend of ours came a couple of days later and said, I'm awake. What's going on? He says, similar experience. So I don't know if anybody else out there has had a DMT activation, but it might be your sensitivity to it, or eventually it's supposed to wake us all up. And then we'll have the grand party we were talking about. We're going to celebrate that we the end of this grand experience. I don't know how long this is going to take before we all get it. I hope we get it before we have World War III or blow ourselves up. But apparently, the Galzu or whoever is watching this grand experiment, it's not going to let us do the extreme, because if we nuke the planet or even have another nuke, we affect the totality of existence and the whole continuum. So they're monitoring that. So anyway, raise your hands out there. Has anybody experienced some kind of awakening, and would you like to share it? And if so, you can even write to me at aquarianradio@gmail.com. By the way, I have this show up on aquarianradio.com, and I'm going to have all the links so you can share it with your friends and listen to it again. Give me a week and I'll have it all up there. But so the veil is thinning. How is it thinning for you? Bring it back to personal.
I I can't keep my abilities repressed anymore. I smoke a lot of pot so that the premonitions stop because it kills me to get knowledge that I cannot give to people when I know they need it.
So you're having a
Wow, I wasn't
difficult
laughing.
coping with the premonitions you have because there's a judgment that you think that's bad?
No. People don't want to hear the truth. And it's hard for me to
All
know
right,
things
so
and I can't say anything.
okay.
It's useful to say, I have some thoughts. Would you like to hear them or not? And just calibrated to the person's ability to listen.
Well, there's also, I understand what you're saying because they don't want to hear it, so they're going to judge you, and if it's also that it's like when you go to the doctor and they say you have cancer and you have 6 months to live. Well, they don't know that, but part of you starts buying into it and you start making it happen. So you're accessing a probability, and both the past, the present, and the future. All those things are malleable, mutable. You can change the past as well as the present and the future.
That's right.
So if you're getting premonition, you don't want to lock them into it, and it's really hard to know when you believe it. Like, I don't know if I believe in all that stuff, but apparently I believe in aging because I'm getting older, right? So if I can stop believing in aging, I can stop aging. So yeah, what do you think of that?
Well, the premonitions, if I had such a low accuracy of my premonitions, I would second guess them. But I've been so accurate for so long that I know I shouldn't second guess them anymore. And I've learned to.
What kind of premonitions do you have that you could share without naming names? Do you have something, like, give us an example of a premonition that you have without naming names?
There's going to be problems. There's going to be a calamity sometime in the next 4 to 9 years. And it's going to start. It's going to start with problems with the food supply. There's going to be something wrong with, like, the crops or the land. Like, I don't know if it's like a disease or a poison or something. And we had 10 years before. It's going to be a series of calamities that happens over a period of time. And I think it's connected to Roger, I always get this term wrong, not the solar flare. What's the other thing?
Coronal mass ejection.
Coronal mass ejections. It's going to affect the land, and that's going to have something to do with it. And then the final thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a misuse of technology. This is where the free will comes in and why the timeline keeps changing. There's going to be some kind of misuse of technology that's going to create a natural disaster that's similar to crustal displacement and cause floods around the world.
Is there anything that can be done? Is that
There's places that are going to be safe, that are not going to be flooded. Like, there'll be a lot of damage, a lot of calamity, a lot of PTSD. Like, there'll be global PTSD. But there's places like Australia will be the only continent that will be untouched. Now there's 3 places in the United States that will be safe. And if people prepare for, people have to start living off the land, right? Learning how to survive. Like, we thought about cutting off the electricity for a month and doing an experiment to see if we could survive. Right? So
you mean like my experiment?
Right. And those kinds of real life things, like making sure you have food supplies, making sure you're in the right place, making sure you're paying attention to current events, because you'll see the signs of these coming before they happen.
What are the 3 safe places?
One is around the Rocky Mountains. I actually have a map where I drew a yellow highlighter around the areas. I'll send it to you guys later. The West Coast will be completely underwater. One of the areas will be the Rocky Mountains, where Denver is. One of the areas will be the mid part of the country, like Arkansas, southern Missouri. That part of the country will actually raise up further. And then in New York, in upstate New York, not the Catskills, but there's another area that's mountainous, that's higher up there. The Adirondacks, that's it. Sorry.
So California will be underwater?
So what-
I'm still waiting for the
The
downside.
entire West Coast, the entire West Coast will be underwater.
Cool. I brought my
Yeah.
floaties.
So
Roger.
there's really nothing we can do because you can't mass transport all these people to these locations. So
No,
I guess
no,
if this
no. And most people aren't going to believe it, right? And so it's almost as if I feel like I have to live this one life on the outside, like that's not going to happen. And then I have to live this other life where I have to plan for it just in case. Now, could that future change? Absolutely. Because the future is subjective and based on free will, right? So
where
that's
do you live?
I live in upstate New York in Niagara Falls.
Uh-huh. And you're gonna be safe?
No.
No. Are you moving
She's
tomorrow?
doomed like the rest of us.
What happens to Maui? Come on.
Unfortunately, the islands will not exist anymore.
All right. Well,
I'm picturing you as a glass is half empty kind of gal.
No, actually, you guys see, this is exactly why I don't tell people, because I'm not.
I'm just
I
joking with
am.
you. Hey,
I
will some
am
of us get beamed up? That's what I want to know.
I
Because
am
like
happy.
Kellinger says, there's millions of people that should have lived in South Africa or in Africa, and that population's gone. And then they found the ruins. Where was it? Mexico or South America? And
Yucatan.
Yucatan, and that had millions of people, and there's no dead bodies. There's no. So maybe some of us get beamed up.
You know what?
I'm not saying.
We've said
Not
that.
just beamed up, but brought underground through. What the people from Agartha tell us is that periodically people that know it's coming down take refuge in the inner earth.
And that's my feeling, Dr. Lessin, that the safety is to be found in caves, right? In the interior of the earth, at the higher elevations and in caves. I keep seeing caves like the caves in Turkey that they found could hold, yes, that could hold 20,000 people. And so I believe, yeah, there's going to be a lot of survivors, but obviously there's going to be a lot of people who don't. But yes, there's safety to be had. Absolutely. It's not a cataclysmic wipeout. Not at all.
During the Great Flood, the Zuni elders have told me that their ETs, they call them the ant people, the short people, brought them underground until the floods were up. They brought them to the Sedona area. They walled off a place that of about 100 square miles, and that for 100 years after the Great Flood, their job was to get survivors and bring them back. And then they, when there was the land dried up enough, they were brought to their current place at the Four Corners area. And so there's other, they were brought underground. There's an entrance in Chaco Canyon and other
That's
places.
what I was going to say. Isn't Chaco the birthplace of humanity in North America?
That's what we think, yes.
The other thing is there's stories of the interdimensional portals, and they open up when there's catastrophes, and they can move into a parallel Earth that's very similar to ours, or they're unaffected. So there's one apparently in Ong's Hat, New York. I don't know if it's close to where you're talking about, but there was a group that's leaving kind of like breadcrumbs for people to find to go to Ong's Hat, and once they got there, if they stood in a certain place, they could see the other dimension and just step into it. And the same thing, David Icke told us one time that there's something like that on the grounds of Buckingham Palace. You stand in a certain place, you can see both dimensions at the same time, and it's just like one step in the other dimension. And then I had one of those in the backyard of my house, and I didn't know, I couldn't quite stand in place and see it, but periodically I'd be walking by and this damn thing would open up. And that's my reptilian connection, is when this portal opened, this reptilian would step through, and then he and I would have a telepathic dialogue, but that's for another day. Anyway, wow. So how is that? So you're living with this, so you have to cope with it, and that's smoking a lot of pot to try to numb yourself, because
Yeah.
you know that this is coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that it's coming. I'm
And
going to make it difficult for whoever's coming back.
and
What's that?
there's things I do in my everyday life to prepare for it. Like when I first started having the premonitions 5 years ago, I learned how to grow food. So now I'm learning about medicinals, and I'm studying about ancient Native American medicinals. I'm trying to specialize in the food that was left with the Native Americans, because I believe their way of life and their diet was probably the closest living to God as we should be living. And I think we tried to wipe them off the face of the planet, right? And our karma, we're paying the karma for that. And I believe the foods that they were given were important, because corn is not a crop that's native to this planet. It was given to us. So are beans. Squash was here. Yes. And so, because corn can't be cultivated without human intervention. So how they say corn evolved is not how corn evolved. But anyways, I feel like those are the heirloom foods are extraordinarily important, and food diversity is very important. I think our food supply is killing us. I know I got very sick, and their answer to it was removing body parts, and I found a tea that solved all my health problems, shockingly. And the surgeon was quite shocked.
Tell us.
Milk thistle tea.
Ah, yeah.
I drink milk thistle tea. I had a gallbladder that was severely blocked, and they wanted to take it out. And so I learned how to do a gallbladder cleanse and things to eat on a regular basis. And I drank the tea, and it dissolved all my stones. My gallbladder was clear. It functions for the most part normally, as long as I drink it. Not only that, my cholesterol, I'm a diabetic who controls it through diet. I've been diabetic 20 years. I haven't had normal cholesterol in 25 years. And I now have the normal blood screen of a non-diabetic.
Why are you keeping this information from us?
Excellent. Yeah, I had the
Where do I get
gallbladder
it?
thing, and I took breakstone tea, so it was a tea. But then I had another condition this past year, and I'm on the milk thistle as well. So
Yeah, and so even the surgeon was so shocked at the reaction to the tea that she made the residences go study about it. So even my primary care physician was shocked at the results from drinking the tea, and they watched me for a year afterwards. So they knew it wasn't a fluke. And the answer, the medical profession, what they wanted to give me? Pain meds.
pain meds and remove your gallbladder. And when I did the same thing, I went back. I said, test me again, and it was gone. Yeah. So.
Yep. I went back for the follow up, and the doctor's like, "It's all gone." I'm like, "I know."
Wow, that's great. That's great. Okay. So.
Pain meds are just a pharmaceutical moneymaker anyway. They don't really help anyone. They just mask the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? We got about 15 minutes left.
I do.
Less, yeah.
Okay. So, Dr. Lessin, you talked, as you told us the story of our human origins, how the names, you married up the names, and that's been my big struggle with research, right? And trying to figure out the story, right? And you married up, I
Yes.
think you said Marduk was Allah, right? Enki was Satan.
No, Nanar was Allah. Nanar. Listen, here? Let me tell you what happened. Okay, remember I said that after the Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar and Sinai were nuked, there was a nuclear storm that blew over Iraq and it killed almost everybody. Okay, and so Marduk, they proclaimed. The other Anunnaki proclaimed Marduk as, Satan as the king of Earth. And what Marduk did is he had the New Year's. If you look at my website, enkispeaks.com, I have the whole story there. But Marduk declared that he was all the gods, and he invited all the other so-called gods. They were just big people to come into Babylon. And he said, I built temples for you there. You'll be so happy as my subordinates. None of them showed. So what he did is he said, I am all those. And so now Marduk is claiming that he's Yahweh, that he's Satan, which is who he is, and that he's Lucifer, and that he's even Inanna, and he named Venus after Sarpanit. And they did this whole ceremony. So now Marduk is going all over the place claiming he's all these different gods, but he's only one guy, and he ain't a god at all.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's when monotheism was born. Okay, so what was your question?
And so that you can get, and so what you have is conflation then, where different people in their tradition.
Listening to you, it all made sense, and I'm like, why doesn't it make sense in the research? Like, why is it so confusing?
And so and so Satan is always what that meant in their the enemy, whoever the enemy is, the sinning of Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't that people were doing anal sex or anything. It was because sinning means they went on Marduk's side and they were opposed to Yahweh, and it all came to a head with Jezebel, who was a Phoenician princess who was married to Adad, the king of Israel, and their idea was to have a widespread trading, peaceful civilization, and that's when you get Elijah versus another prophet, and the competing prophets, and what you really have is both Yahweh, who is Enlil, and Marduk, who is Satan, each claiming that they're Yahweh, and you get vast confusion, and ultimately that's what really pissed Jesus off too.
Okay, so one other question. You had mentioned, one of you mentioned about the temples, I think in Greece, right? The healing temples?
Yes.
So the Oracle of Delphi was real. The Oracle of Delphi was real, right?
Yes, the Oracle of Delphi was real. However, she was really stoned on the fumes that come in. So when Alexander came and he drew his sword and say, I want to know if I'm really God's son, Zeus's son, she said, oh yeah, you were.
What was your question about the oracles of Delphi?
The temples. It seems like, okay, based on our history and everything you've said, for the sake that it's true, there was obviously high technology, right? There must have been high healing, right? Ways of healing people, high medical technology too.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Many times, Nimrod said, look, all these diseases I know how to cure it. I'll teach the earthlings how to do it. And Yahweh said, no, I want them to all die. That was when he was in his mean phase.
And so I just recently learned this past week that we were genetically designed to live to be 38 years old. Our DNA
38?
Our DNA is designed for us to expire at 38.
Oh, I haven't heard that. Tell us the theory on that one. Where did you learn that from?
That was in, God, I want to say, I read it in CNN this week based on a study. I can't tell you where. And they said just based on modern living standards and modern technology that we have been able to double that lifespan, but they've been able to analyze the DNA of a lot of different species. And for the most part, the age the DNA is engineered to is about how long they live. And one of the few exceptions is humans. There was some science study that
Right.
came
So
out this
you're
past week.
saying we're expired. We're supposed.
We're
38,
supposed,
but-
yeah, we're supposed to die at 38. And when you think
See,
about it, that's
find
right.
that. Send me that link.
What's that?
I'd love to see that. If you can find that article again.
Okay,
send
I'm
me
going to
the
go back.
link. I'd like to read
I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back because I thought that was fascinating. I'm going to go back and look for that. Yeah, I'll try to send it to you.
Well, we originally are designed to live 500,000 or a million years. So they did some genetic alterations. In the Bible, they said they gave us 120 years, but there's very few people that reach that. But they did that. They shortened our life expectancy because Methuselah and all them were living to be over 100 or whatever, 1,000 or whatever. But I talked to a Dr. Aubrey de Grey from the Methuselah Foundation and the Human Genome Project, and they're working on it, the genetics, and he says that in this that half the people alive today will live to be 1,000, and they're really so close to discovering the off gene that it's he doesn't know the he doesn't know the Illuminati stuff. He's not into that stuff, but he doesn't understand the repression of the technology. But he said it's coming out. The rich probably already have it, and that was about 5-10 years ago. I talked to him, so he said first the rich will get it and they'll suppress it. So we have people that are alive, that are human, that are born through the process, that are probably going to live to be 1,000. And the theory is that even like the Queen Mother, they would do the transmigration of the soul into a younger baby so that she could appear to die, but they actually keep renewing them.
What they do to show a death is they make a clone that's near death, and they switch it, and they bring the person for rejuvenation aboard their ship, and they let the body die so other people could witness it. Gloria, one of the people that Gloria Hawker talked about how they did that with her husband, and then on board ship there was her husband. He had certain marks on his penis. She knew it was him, and but they just put a clone that was scarcely alive, and so they let her witness it. And that's what they do with people like that guy that had that island where the Clintons and Epstein's island and everybody orgy and so forth. Oh, and so then Epstein supposedly hung himself, but they really brought his body out. They just disappear, these people, because they have too much in everybody else. And so they can't, which will be released if they're really killed. So he's living the high life somewhere in incognito, just like Hitler. Bormann built him a castle in Argentina and lived his days out there.
Right. So it already exists, but what he was saying is that in 1,000 years we reach escape velocity. So humans are designed to live millions of years. This body, it's just been genetically manipulated. So I think it'll come forward, and I keep holding that vision, and and I think it's possible. So don't buy that you're going to die, or even the apocalyptic. Part of this is that we have free will, and that we can create. What I was shown is 24 multiverses where I, as the experiencer, could choose to go. 12 of them were very negative, apocalyptic, and 12 of them were very kind of glorious and what do you call it?
Groovy.
Yeah, you're right. And so I was a chooser, and I chose utopian. That's what I'm looking for. I chose the utopian one. So we are the chooser, and part of what they're finding is that we are creating this. We are co-creating this. So I invite you. I know you had these visions, but I invite you to go, nah, erase it, and then reprogram yourself with something positive. Okay, 5 minutes. Who wants to say something? The talking stick is up for grab.
Well, you say to reprogram yourself, but when I've had these visions before in the past, they come true.
And I've had apocalyptic visions too, and I grew up with a lot of them. And right now, I've totally changed where I was. That when I was on board the ship, they gave me 24 potentialities, and they said, "You're the chooser. Do you really want to go down that timeline? Do you really want to have all your friends and family, everybody die, even though you might survive? Or do you really want to die that way?" So you're the chooser. You're always the chooser. And if you choose that, then enjoy it, because there really is no death. You're going to be outside. Oh, I'm losing my battery. Oh, we're just in time. We're going to be over. Go ahead.
Well, let's just put it this way. Let's say that you think that everything's going to be really wonderful, and then you die, but at least you lived your life thinking everything was wonderful. Or you can think everything's going to be terrible and mess up whatever life you do have. So you don't lose anything by being positive.
Well, I'm always positive, and I'm not one who lives for tomorrow. So I never expected to live past 18. So far as I'm concerned, every day I wake up is gravy.
Yeah, and that's it. When are you going to be the one you really want to be? When are you going to love somebody the way you really want to love them? Now. That's the only time you really got, and there's nothing but now. The past is long gone, and the future never gets here.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right. So it's been so much fun talking to you, Dr. Lessin. I have so many other questions, but they'll just have to.
It's been a real pleasure.
Spend some time. Will you please tell us about your show, and do you have a website? We have 2 minutes.
We don't have a website. We didn't expect to be on the air past our probationary period, so we're currently working on our website. We're each working on individual websites, and we're working on a group website. Tallahassee and Enchanted Soul both have YouTube channels. And Tallahassee, is it under War Machine or is it under Tallahassee?
Is what was under? What are you looking for?
YouTube.
Oh, my YouTube. I have a couple. I can't remember. I'll find it. I'll get it to you. I'll find out what screen it. I have a few of them.
And then Danielle does have a website.
Please email me all those things, and I'll put them on your page on my Aquarian Radio, which is kind of archived, and it'll be there forever till I die.
And
all right.
Danielle has a website and an Instagram page.
I want to post that reptilian so you guys can see that too. If you can give me a little feedback on that.
Oh yeah, I'd like to see that. Send me that when we get off the air.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Or send it now. I don't care. Now's good as time, anytime. So it's been such a delight having you. We are Jan and Sasha. We have 2 minutes. Okay, Sasha, what would you like to say? Final words.
I enjoyed rapping with y'all.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
I can't believe hours went by this fast.
Yeah, it did.
Say that again. I couldn't quite hear you.
I said, I can't believe 4 hours went by this fast, and I still have all these questions.
Well, we can always do it again. So it's been a delight. And I want to thank everybody. And I think my computer's making this sound because my battery is running out on my phone here, but we made it 4 hours. So thank you so much. And please, everybody, come back to aquarianradio.com in about 3 days, and I'll have all the links and uploads. And you can, like I said, watch it again, send it to your friends, and have them enjoy this. Go ahead, Sash.
Remember your dreams. Your dreams are really giving you information if you just let them give you their messages.
Will do.
And is this the only time that you guys broadcast?
Yeah, we only broadcast once a week from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We're so glad that you're just before us because your vibes are just perfect. I'm so happy you're there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Much love and blessings. And
love and light.
That's a wrap.
Love and light, everybody. Thanks.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Aloha.